two, and one. All right, and welcome back to the Reserve Squad Midweek Show. I'm your host Ben, and I am a saddened Liverpool supporter today. And I am joined once again by Rex, who is a little bit on the opposite spectrum right now with Arsenal. So, Rex, good to see you
That's
again.
right. Good to be back and good to be top of the league. I need to take a picture of the table for for times where maybe we're not at the top later in the season. I don't know. Just cautiously optimistic at the beginning of the year.
hmm Yeah, I mean, and speaking of the table, when that Sancho goal went in versus Liverpool, like the first thing like the announcer said was like, "And United are above Liverpool in the table, and that matters." So,
Yeah,
way to
that was
even
weird.
rub further salt. Um, Alex, our buddy Alex has been texting basically all month. When does the season start? And apparently it started for him yesterday, and now I'm kind of echoing those thoughts. But I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
we've got a crazy show to get into because it's not just Liverpool in turmoil, maybe Chelsea as well, and we had a crazy game with Manchester City and Newcastle, which I wasn't fully expecting. So, with that said, let's kind of do what we've done in the past couple of weeks. We'll do like a top storyline, and then really kind of get into the games because I'm kind of worried about time for this one. So, what was maybe a top storyline for you for the weekend?
Oh well, I'm not going to take yours. I'm mainly going to go with. I want to go with that City and Newcastle game, but I'm going to go with the Man United. I guess I'll put up air quotes turnaround, just because it was a good game against a really good team. But I'm still not convinced that they're back all the way. I'm a little worried. Maybe Casemiro will help now, but 84 million up to 84 million for a 30-year-old isn't great for the long run of the team. But yeah, I'll go with Man United surprisingly winning. Even though last week, Ben, you were kind of like, I wouldn't be surprised if United won. I was still really surprised, honestly, and the way they played was completely different from the previous two games. So really big turnaround and big calls to bench people like Maguire and Ronaldo and Fred, and it worked today or yesterday, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. It feels like it transcends sports because it happens a lot in football or like NFL. Like here, like when a team gets absolutely blasted and blown out, usually they respond in some manner. So like, I texted Jeremy yesterday. I was like, I can credit Brentford for the assist for this damn game. Because it did. I mean,
Yeah,
they obviously have been yelled at and probably been running just the entire week. Like, yeah, it just
Mhm.
it didn't set up. It didn't set up well. But Klopp selections kind of helped with that. But we'll get into that. I was
True.
gonna actually do a rant a little bit on VAR because there are a couple goals for Palace and Brentford that were really ridiculous. And Arsenal, they almost called off the Ben White thing. I don't like how they're basically go doing the microscope. But that's kind of repeating myself because I feel like everyone's kind of thinking that way. I'm going to switch it up and say I'm starting to believe winning the Community Shield versus Manchester City is a curse, and so you should not do it anymore because it happened to Leicester last year, and Liverpool are now set to maybe have a little bit more of a disappointing season than people were expecting.
Mhm.
Maybe another one to kind of touch on. So I guess I'll do three. Is Gerard Lampard and Brendan Rodgers are kind of on the same career path right now. So and we'll maybe
Mhm.
get to that at the end. So that's kind
You
of
could
something.
potentially add Moist potentially to that too. So far, I know it's early, but West Ham is they got good players and they're not doing well.
Yeah, but I would at least give Moyes a little credit where he's at least he's a seasoned pro. I guess at this a little bit more than them. I guess Rodgers too.
Yeah.
But yeah. We're kind of. I mean, Moise actually could be a good shot too. I wasn't really thinking that, but yeah, that's fair. All right, so all right, now I'm gonna start the stopwatch now. We're gonna get started with Man City and Newcastle. Just an absolute barn burner of a game, 3-3. Uh, Bernardo Silva gets a surprise start. Actually, John Stones and Aki get started at center back as well with Ruben Diaz on the bench, so that was a surprise. But
Mhm.
yeah, it gets started
Yeah.
with uh, Gundogan, basically just 2 minutes in the game. It's a brilliant ball by Bernardo Silva. So Pep starting him, I guess, immediately showed up. Uh, and then City were really on the front foot for that first 20 minutes. But out of nowhere,
Mhm.
Miguel Almiron actually got Newcastle level. And then from that moment on, it was actually Newcastle that were on the front foot and really giving City some problems, which we're about to get into. Callum Wilson then gets the second with a great run by Alan St. Maximin to set him up. Then a free kick from Trippier, and then City come back with a Holland goal, and then another Bernardo Silva goal with a just an absurd ball from Kevin De Bruyne. Um,
Yeah.
but I mean, just kind of the story of the game. It was a bonkers game. We talked. I kind of gassed up about Chelsea and Spurs last week, and that was good for like drama, I guess. But I mean, this. I mean, this was like a FIFA game by comparison. I mean,
It was. Yeah.
Alan St. Maximin did not look real to me. The way that he was able to. I've never seen like someone make Kyle Walker scared. And the way, like Kyle Walker didn't want to close him down. It was wild. I mean the passing by Bernardo Silva for the first goal and De Bruyne for the City's I guess third goal were FIFA like as well. And then to add cherry on top, Nick Pope was making some FIFA saves that I just don't think
Yeah.
a normal keeper would have made. So I mean it was great on the eye, great entertainment. Uh, like, actually, without Pope, it possibly could have been City scoring five or six. To be honest,
Yeah.
so
It could have been. Yeah.
but let's get started. Let's get started with Newcastle because frankly, it was just a relief to watch a team actually go at City. A team to actually, not be afraid to go at pace. You saw early on, Bruno Guimaraes actually get a lick on Kevin De Bruyne. It gave him a yellow card, but I mean, you saw some actual slide tackles. You saw a team being physical for a change. Kieran Trippier actually tried to do the same thing, and it almost led to a red. But it was just good to see teams not necessarily being afraid. Um, I tried to convince myself actually before the game started that maybe Newcastle might actually have a chance here. And then I remembered immediately back to that game in April. It was the game before Arsenal, I think, where it was like 5-0.
Mhm.
But and I guess like the counterpoint to that is that was without Trippier. That was without someone like Boatman playing. That was without Pope and without Callum Wilson. And so it was really rotten luck for Arsenal to play that Newcastle like the next week when Callum Wilson was playing because you see how much different he is. He can make them.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. True.
and so I guess I'll kind of throw it up to you. I mean, what what were your thoughts? I guess of the game, or what are you thinking about Newcastle right now?
Well, I was a little down on Newcastle from last week just because they had that lackluster 0-0 draw. So I was a little down on them, just a touch. But man, I mean, this really was like a FIFA game, like you say. And St. Maximin always taking people on, making like, really fast step overs, always doing a move. It was really good. But I do, I don't know. I mean, I look at City and Pep only made one sub, and that was because Ake got injured in the first half. So
That's a
I'd
good
like
call.
I mean, we put it in the script. We would kind of like to maybe see like a double pivot in the midfield with maybe Rodri and Calvin Phillips. That would have been possibly better for this game
Mhm.
because you could kind of have just a little bit more support there. And Phillips hasn't really played that much, but man, like De Bruyne was great, Silva was good, Gundogan was good. Holland was varying up his runs nicely. He kind of pulled a center back out when he checked to De Bruyne. De Bruyne went to that ball to Silva.
Mhm.
So, Holland's still not like dominant, but he kind of is when you consider like like his touches. He doesn't have many touches, but they lead to goals and assists.
Yes.
So I think he'll get going too, which is the scary part. And like you said, they didn't look that good in this game, and then they were able to switch the flick the switch and kind of turn everything around. And like Pope was making brilliant saves. Like you said, it could have been like a 5-3 win, and City didn't even play that well. So I think Pep will be taking some positives from it, but also he'll be disappointed. Obviously, they couldn't really deal with Newcastle's press, and Eddie Howe basically in the post game was like, "We're not going to sit back against these teams. We're going to attack."
Mhm.
And I feel like they finally have the players where they can do that, and it's going to be really fun football for the fans at the very least. And they've been craving that for a long, long time.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I definitely noticed is we talked the first week after they played West Ham how we mentioned how Cancelo and Kyle Walker were kind of playing more inside and almost like in midfield, and a lot of people after that game were really praising and how genius of this was, because it allowed them to almost have an extra man at least in midfield, and it was really hard to turn them over. But what was happening is City were actually turning the ball over a little bit, and unlike with what we saw with West Ham, Newcastle were not afraid to run at them. You saw it with Willock a few times, and you really saw it with
Hmm.
Alan St. Maxian. And you know, it's one thing. We've seen in the past when someone like Son or Dama Traore, even Boatman last year, have gotten the odd counter on Pep's side. But I can't remember a time when it was this constant. I mean, it happened for like a 20-30 minute stretch in that first half, and it didn't seem like City had any kind of ways to stop that. And so, just to kind of keep the focus on Newcastle, um, they were very good versus Nottingham Forest, and but they only got 4 shots on Brighton. But and when you look at the bench, that's maybe where you see the trouble. It's Sean Longstaff, Chris Wood. I think Jacob Murphy came on in this game as well. Uh, it's a team with like a lot of ball runners or a lot of like dribblers and ball carriers, but it feels like without like Jones or Shelby, they're kind of lacking someone next to Bruno that is able to just kind of keep the ball a little bit because in that second half, even with the 2 goal lead, they were still trying like this home run ball stuff, and they were still trying to break as much as possible. And when it didn't come
Hmm.
off, it was allowing City to actually kind of do the same. So they didn't have a way to kind of control
Yeah.
the game, even when they had the 2 goal lead. But let's kind of talk a little bit about the job that Eddie Howe has done because I was kind of shrugging it off last year because he got $120 million. You're supposed to do a good job. We're seeing Chelsea spend crazy amounts and screw up, and we're seeing Man United kind of do the same. So maybe it's worth to kind of talk a little bit more about the job he's done than dismiss it.
I think so, and I think they've gone out and they haven't necessarily, done a PSG and just bought a bunch of superstars. They bought good players, but maybe some players that we necessarily haven't heard of as much,
Hmm.
and they've worked out really well. I mean, Botman was from the French league. He was really good there, but maybe not a well-known name. Kind of same with Gamaris, not like a superstar like Neymar and Mbappe. Like we were kind of thinking that you get someone like that with all that money, but instead they've kind of gone out and gotten players that kind of fit the system and good players that aren't astronomically expensive. They kind of spread out where they can buy new players. They got a midfielder, they got a couple defenders, they got a good goalie on the cheap from Burnley. So I'm really impressed with just the way they've kind of put this team together. It's not a bunch of superstars coming into the team like maybe a Nottingham Forest. It's
Hmm.
they actually went out and were smart about who they bought. And I do agree though the bench a little weak. They need maybe a little bit more reinforcement there. But I'm sure they're going to cook up something before the transfer window ends. But yeah, they were amazing, and I just they continue this free flowing attacking football. And I mean, a lot of it depends on Wilson and St. Maximin being healthy,
It
unfortunately.
really does. Yeah.
But they're fun to watch, man. I hope they stay healthy because it was a great game, and I hope they continue playing like that.
I mean, what's wild is like Eddie Howe coming into his side and playing more, attacking or good on the eye football isn't surprising because he actually did this at Bournemouth a lot. But his issues at Bournemouth were his sides were getting cut open a ton.
Mhm.
This not really including this game because Man City are a freak team right now. But they've improved so much defensively as well. You mentioned like the signings. I think that's kind of I mean the recruitment at the back, Trippier, Dan Burn, Botman, like you said. Very like you said, it's been clever buying, but really the cherry on top has been Nick Pope. It made so
Mhm.
much sense for someone to go out and get him, and it was kind of shocking that I think only Newcastle were really the ones that pursued it. But we're
Yeah.
gonna get to another player later on down when talking about your team as everyone's kind of consensus, signing of the season. If Nick Pope can play like this, he might be a shout. Because this is 2 weeks in a row where he's kind of saved. He saved his side a point last week, and well, saved his side 2 points now.
Yeah. And he wasn't super expensive either.
And so, kind of sticking a little bit on Newcastle, and then they can move on. We have mentioned maybe the lack of depth in the bench. What do you think? Maybe they could upgrade? Because personally, I don't necessarily see Bruno Guimaraes as the kind of lone central defensive midfielder. I think he'd be maybe better further upfield. So I would say maybe target a CDM I was thinking maybe
Mhm.
Ndidi, to be honest. I know they've been linked to Madison. I think Ndidi would be better for them. And
Yeah, indeed, would be good.
honestly, maybe even a Tillmans, someone that would keep possession a little bit more. Um, but what were you thinking? I mean, you mentioned maybe there's a lack of attacking depth. So
Mhm.
I think they've been linked to someone like Yao Pedro. But what are your thoughts, at least on some of those names?
Yeah, it looks like I think they got Yao Pedro, which would be great because I think they need. I mean, I think they need another striker just because Wilson hasn't proven that he can stay healthy throughout a season, and I would like to see them have another fast winger like Saint Max because he's another one that might not be able to stay healthy
True.
too much.
Hmm.
But I mean, they could always use like another midfielder because they're going Willock, Gamira, and Jolin, and there's really not a lot else on the team. So again, if there's an injury there, they're kind of in trouble. So they got, if a forward gets hurt, they're in trouble. If a wide player gets hurt, they're in trouble. If a midfielder gets hurt, they're in trouble. So I would be looking to reinforce those areas. At least, three decent signings for each spot. I think they'd be in good shape because I hate to say this, but Wilson's going to miss a couple of games at least. Sam
Probably.
Maximin too.
Hmm.
It's just the way they play, and they're going to get hacked. And Saint Maximin, is so good at dribbling, he gets hacked a bunch. So they need more depth for sure.
I mean, Wilson. That's honestly his only knock at the moment. You look at what he
Yeah.
has to offer. He's got pretty good pace on him, so he can make these runs from behind. He's got very good hold up play. He's got a great finish on him. But it is the injury record. I mean, without the injury record, I mean, this guy could maybe be pushing for an England spot. Um,
Well, I'd love to see a full season of him playing. How many goals he'd score? Because we said last year we thought he would definitely be really close to the Golden Boot. So we'll see if he could stay healthy the whole season. He could be in the top two for Golden Boot potentially.
and one thing we should say is there was a little controversy in the game about maybe even like 15 minutes to go in the game. Kieran Trippier did bring down De Bruyne, and it was eventually a red, or it was in the beginning called a red card, and then the ref came back and kind of overturned it. I mean, what were your quick thoughts on that? I was kind of stunned. It was a red, but replay was not actually kind, so I'm kind of in between.
Yeah, it was a little high. It was on his knee. I don't know. I'm okay. I'm okay with them overturning it and doing a yellow, just because me personally, I want to see the teams at 11v11. I don't want like this game to be diminished or anything like that. So I'm okay with it. It wasn't like too bad. It was definitely high. Like I said, it was on his knee, and he wasn't necessarily the last man back, but they were definitely on the break. City were. So I'm okay with it though. I kind of want the 11v11. I want all the players out there, you know, keeping this game interesting like they've been doing the whole game. So I was okay with it.
Yeah, and I guess to kind of throw a devil's advocate for all the City fans complaining, I thought there was a foul on Fabian Schär in the box, and that right before the halftime whistle, that's a for sure foul and a PK in any other
Yeah.
game but Man City apparently. So they have nothing nothing to gripe about. But kind of focusing on City a little bit. We mentioned how they were so open, and I'm wondering if it was maybe because Pep did play Bernardo Silva and Kevin De Bruyne on the same side. I can't really recall a time when Pep actually played Foden, Kevin De Bruyne, Gundogan, Silva, all at the same time. To be honest, like
Yeah.
it's speaking of FIFA, that's like a FIFA lineup. It's there's not really a lot behind it, and I think you kind of saw that play out as well. You didn't really have either De Bruyne or Silva, tracking back, and so yeah, Kyle Walker was the only line of defense, and when he was beaten, good luck, John Stones, for Salad
Yeah.
St. Maxian. So I think that was kind of an issue. And so I don't know. I was trying to think. Is it possible that it's great to see City drop points early in the season or earlier? Maybe this makes them vulnerable, but I think we both agree. No, this actually scares us more because they didn't necessarily play that well, and within a flip of the switch, we're able to score two. Honestly, could have scored four in that second half. So
Yeah, it was kind of a weird. I don't know. When I first saw the lineup, I was like, Ake and Stones doesn't really make sense. It's kind of been Ake and Diaz. Like, why would you break up that partnership when they've been on cruise control for the past two games? And then Ake gets hurt, and that kind of like ruins the game plan too.
mhm.
And now they're looking pretty paper thin at center back too because Laporte's out and Ake is hurt. So you basically have Jones and Diaz right now, and that's it. So
Mhm.
I was a little worried about that too, and confused. And the Ake getting hurt really early on doesn't help the game plan at all either. But yeah, they need a center back. But other than that, I think it's typical City. I mean, they were on cruise control the first two games, and then finally they come up against a team that's actually willing to, attack them and attack them the whole game. And they couldn't deal with it. And I mean, they didn't have Grealish either. Maybe this was a game where he could have helped out. He could have held the ball up to a little bit, but I'm not too worried about City. They were able to get a point, and they didn't really play well at all. So not bad.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people kind of got on to Holland trying to meme him for only having 8 touches, and uh, maybe it's 2 touches, two passes, 8 touches last week. And this is kind of the game where you see that really didn't didn't age well. Just kind of real quickly, I mean, what did you think of Holland's performance? Just because you mentioned how
It was great.
he was maybe even a decoy for a couple of these goals, and I
Yeah.
agree with that as well.
Yeah, well, the last goal, he came to De Bruyne, and I think just because he's such a dangerous target, at the top of the box, you can't really let him have any time. So he was closed down by the center back immediately, and then Silva kind of cut in where the center back was, and from there it's just a beautiful ball by De Bruyne. But it's all about Holland coming to the ball and creating that space in behind, and Silva exploiting it, which I thought was great. And it was just another example of how Holland doesn't have to touch the ball to be impactful. Just mixing up your runs and working hard like that, will create things for other people. And he's kind of, they didn't have a player like this last year. He can hold up the
Right.
ball really well, and he's a big target player. I mean, kind of honestly, what I thought Liverpool was lacking yesterday. So it kind of shows you that, Holland will get you points maybe where they would have lost this game last year. They wouldn't have come back from the scoreline that they were down at maybe last year with them.
And it's also versus Bournemouth. Bournemouth are just going to play a back five and just not really give you any space. It's not really
Yeah.
where it's going to show up. Newcastle were playing so high up, and it was very attacking, and everything was very open. You think about how a lot of games are in the Champions League. I mean, this is where he's really going to fly for them. You imagine. But another thing
Yeah.
I kind of noticed is it's very interesting how they're playing Holland as opposed to what Liverpool were doing with Darwin Nunes. At least I've noticed this I noticed this in the Crystal Palace game. Liverpool tried like 70 long balls versus them. Where City are still trying to play stuff. They're still trying to play. I mean, they're going direct a few times, but they're still trying to somewhat play on the ground. They're still trying to progress upfield. So it hasn't necessarily changed a whole lot in how they play, which I was expecting it maybe would. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Good point.
and so unfortunately we do have to get into the other game, the other I guess result for a Manchester club, and it is Man United Liverpool. Man United do turn around after losing 4-0 to Brentford and not even playing in the first half versus them.
Hmm.
Turn around and beat their big rivals 2-1. Goals from Sancho, Rashford, and then Salah got one late to maybe make the last like 8 minutes interesting, but it really wasn't. Um, I mean, I think the story of the game is you kind of mentioned it. Ten Hag did make some proper changes to his side, and some pretty big made some big calls. I mean, I personally can't remember the last time someone actually dropped Harry Maguire for when he was fit. I think
Hmm.
Ragnick did it because there was like a bomb threat against him last season. But that's really, I mean, he's been their captain for the last like year. So
Yeah.
that was a big call, and I definitely think it paid off. And then on the flip side, Klopp's decisions were really horrific, and I'm going to get a lot into that. So
Ugh.
we'll start with Man United. It's an absolute wild week. We did the show on Tuesday, and then basically the following day, all of a sudden they were linked to Casemiro and got him. There's been a Glazers out protest been scheduled all week. I think it actually did happen.
Oh yeah.
There's talks to postpone the game. And yeah, they topped it off with getting a win over Liverpool, and now all of a sudden everything is happy. Glazers in. Um, so I think we should maybe talk about the changes. I mean, what did you think of the changes, and how much different did you think United was this week than last week? We'll start there.
Yeah. Well, I love the changes, and I mean, we talked about it last week. We're not. I mean, we're not football experts per se, but we said, you got to get Maguire out of there. You got to get, maybe Alanga, put some young players in there.
Mhm.
And that's what he did. And it really paid off. Martinez was absolutely fantastic. Malcia was really good. Alanga was good. McTominay instead of Fred was a little bit better. Maybe Casemiro is there in the future, which makes it look even better. But I also like the way they played from the whistle. They came out, they pressed really hard. Liverpool didn't necessarily know how to deal with that from the beginning. And also, there's just a physicality about United early on too. I think you probably saw like Martinez took out Salah really early on, and then kind of put a shoulder into
Yeah,
him,
yeah,
and kind of was like,
it's a
"This
statement.
is a tone for the whole game."
Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then honestly, too, that's if you got talented players like Salah, Firmino, Diaz, they're not necessarily big, but they're so technical. You kind of have to rough them up and be physical with them and kind of rattle them that way. And it really paid off. And I also think though, Darwin Nunez, this would have been a pretty good game for him,
Yes.
just because if you look at the strikers, the forward line, there's not a lot of height, so they really couldn't target Martinez's height like maybe Darwin Nunez could have. Would have been interesting to see, them feeding balls to Darwin and seeing what Martinez could do in the air against a taller aerial threat. So that definitely hurt Liverpool, along with injuries too, Ben. So I wouldn't be too. Don't be too doom and gloom. A lot of interest kind of forced, but you'll get into like Hendo and Milnerson. Milner, Milnerson would probably be a better player.
I think that's
Brazilian.
proper. Milnerson. That's the way I call it. We mentioned Rashford last week, and he looked such a different player. And I don't know if it's because he wasn't with Ronaldo, but he was free again. He was confident. He was fine running with the ball. He was making he wasn't just making good runs when the space was there. He was dangerous in the box. He was a different player. Is Sancho as well. And then out of nowhere, I was kind of starting to make fun of someone like Diego Dallo for United.
Yeah.
This guy really showed up Luis Diaz, which I wasn't expecting. And Malacia on the other side handled Salah pretty well. Uh,
Mhm.
and one thing I'm going to get into with Trent, and Trent and Robertson. Well, Robertson is not the same, but for fullback sake, those two lost the ball 10 times, where Trent lost it 24.
Ooh.
You need to. So it's good. They were good defensively, but they also didn't turn the ball over. And just I don't know if it was because Dallo wasn't playing with Harry Maguire, but just United weren't having the issues of turning the ball over in the back. I know they were going long a lot more, so maybe that was it too. Um,
Oh yeah, good call. Yeah, from the like De Gea, like one of the first goal kicks, it looked like he might try to go short, and De Gea was just like, "No, everyone get up. I'm just going to do this long," which is smart because you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot right around the top of the box like they have been doing recently.
It's also smart because without Fabinho, that's someone that would normally win those second balls. Henderson is just not a number 6. Milner should not see any kind of serious game time in midfield, and I'll definitely get into that.
Yeah.
But goals from Sancho and Rashford. Is there anything you saw in either particular goal or anything you want to comment at least on those two players?
Oh well, so the first goal, we saw a little bit of a dispute between Milner and Van Dijk on the first goal. Milner kind of was chasing back, and Sancho did a fake, got Milner to ground, and then fired home. Van Dijk just kind of stood there. He didn't close down space. He just stood there with his hands behind his back. So I was disappointed about that. You got to come up and at least put some pressure in his face as a center back. And Milner rightfully had to go at Van Dijk afterwards for that. But it wasn't the best game for Van Dijk. I think he'll bounce back. It was just a blip. But yeah, I agree with you too on Rashford. Just looked completely different too. He looked free, and I had to go at him last week because last year he didn't produce at all. He went from like 20 goals to 5. And now this game, it looked like he was kind of back to his old self. Like you said, maybe it's not playing with Ronaldo, playing up top, kind of being like the main guy. So it was good to see. I like Rashford, and I want him to do well. So I liked him up top, and I still think they got United has some issues because they're going to have Maguire and Ronaldo on the bench. They might be kind of poisoned to the locker room potentially. So I don't know about that, but it's a big win, and they needed it too. Things are kind of looking up now again, and they're gonna have to build on it. And that's kind of what Ten Hag said afterwards. We got to build on this result, otherwise it's meaningless.
Well, it's a big game versus rival. Everyone's kind of counting you out, so you can get away with having completing 176 passing. You can get away with having 30% of the ball versus Liverpool. But the
Yeah.
way the team was set up, that would have been the same thing versus Brighton. Now, maybe they would have won the game. Maybe it would have been different in that respect. But you can't do that with smaller teams, and I do think that's something to get into. I texted Jeremy.
Mhm.
I could see this being 4 or 5, and then after they got that goal, Bruno kept trying these home run long balls, and they kept giving possession away freely, and it actually got Liverpool back into the game. Um, and Yeah, I think that's something to maybe focus on. Like it's a great result, obviously, and the attack was definitely a lot better. But yeah, there's still some issues. But one of the things that maybe could fix some of that is bringing someone like Casemiro in. So what do you think of this signing?
I've been like struggling with it because it really does help them in the here and the now, and maybe
Yes, sir.
next year and the year after that. But up to 84 million, I think, for a 30-year-old is kind of in a way what kind of got them in this predicament in the first place, kind of because you
Yeah,
got
it does kind of mimic
Ronaldo.
Varane.
Ronaldo's old. Yeah, Varane's actually been playing well, but when you sign these older players for a lot of money, you don't know how many years you're going to get out of them, and then what do you think they would sell Casemiro for if he started? He turns 35 in 5 years. If he even makes it that long, they're going to sell him for like 10, 20 mil tops. So that's like a 60 million hit. But I think he helps with the here and now. I think he'll be solid, and
Mhm.
he brings a lot of experience, obviously winning, La Liga and Champions League and things like that. So yeah, it helps now, but it's going to inflate their wage bill too. They're going to have to cut ties with some of these expensive players that aren't performing. So I think Casemiro will perform, but if he doesn't, it's just another big salary guy that they probably won't be able to get rid of.
Well, I'm very curious if Ten Hag's now going to maybe change formations, to be honest, because Casemiro allows you to maybe play a number 6 with maybe two number 8s. But one thing that happened at Madrid is Casemiro, when Madrid were trying to play out of the back or build possession, Casemiro was actually further upfield. You had Cruz and Modric drop, and they were the kind of the outlets. You can't necessarily do that at United. And if there is maybe a
No.
negative, I'm not going to say Casemiro is Fred on the ball, not at all. But he does have a bit of a heavy first touch when he's trying to collect it, which has
Mm.
basically been the issue for them. Now, on the flip side, he is fantastic at closing people down. He has been anytime Liverpool has played him in the Champions League, he is always started. So I mean, I don't necessarily think he has necessarily had injury issues. So age maybe not necessarily an issue right now. Now Jeremy thinks he's just going for a paycheck, so that could be a problem. But if not, I agree. He immediately shapes them up. And there was a lot of complaining over the week going into the Liverpool game that a couple of United stars were complaining about running and training. I mean,
Mm.
this guy's a seasoned
Yep.
pro. He stops all that. So yeah, I mean, it's just crazy because here United are protesting, complaining about the owners, Glazers out, and they've also put out like an $80 million bid for Anthony, who's a player I don't even think they need. So I mean, their owners are at least spending. They just it's like the opposite of Liverpool. They're spending stupidly,
Yeah.
where I'm just asking for a crumb. Just kind of I guess that's a segue and time to get into to Liverpool. I think it's a devastating result. Not just performance wise. I mean, you can lose a game, even though they haven't lost since like February. Um, you can lose a game. There can be a one off. There can be maybe a deflected goal, an off red card. Maybe someone wasn't in the right position. Things like that. Um, but what's worrying to me is I'm starting to see a pattern, and patterns are what scare me. Uh, I also think that pretty much hardly any of these goals that they've conceded this year, I don't think would have happened with someone like Kanate playing. So injury is already definitely showing up. But one reason I wasn't necessarily as high on Liverpool to start the season is I looked at the midfield, and on paper it does look fine with Keita and Thiago and Fabinho. That's very solid. Henderson interchanging. Isn't necessarily the issue that we've necessarily seen with Thiago. But with Thiago out, the midfield situation is fatal. To be honest, you're playing Milner and Henderson now in 2 games. Milner and Henderson have featured in all 3 games.
Mhm.
Milner is 37 years old. Milner cannot run. Milner has been able to convince a lot of people that he's like the fittest guy on the team because he wins like some fitness award every preseason. And that is what he is. He's a workout warrior, I guess. I mean, he looks great for being 37, but
Yeah,
he should not be lacing his boots up for anything other than League Cup games. To be honest,
yeah,
it's a problem. And I mean, the lineup was shocking to me. Fabinho was healthy to play. He played
yeah. I don't get
Henderson.
Fabinho.
He played Henderson instead, and Henderson is a fault for both goals. His positioning was awful. He was, to be a holding midfielder, you need to hold the position to make sure that there isn't a gap between midfield and defense. And what you saw is a gigantic gap. And anytime there was a loose ball, Man United had all this room to run. So I mean, that was maybe another reason why Rashford, Sancho, and whatnot, Elanga looked very good. There was no one to beat. There was just space everywhere.
They're running. Yeah, they're running at a center back without the cover of the DM, which is. I mean, that's a terrifying prospect if you're a center back and you got Rashford running at you with no help, like straight at you with speed.
Right. So like everyone's getting on Van Dyke for you, for the goal. I think there's maybe an argument that he's not necessarily a fault, but I can see it. But Van Dijk had an okay game because again, United easily should have scored five with how open this was, and the fact they didn't. I think again, they still have some issues, but. I mentioned injuries. Injuries aren't necessarily to blame for this with Henderson and positioning. I, Another problem is when Liverpool did try to pass from the back, Henderson was not showing himself to be available, and Milner was just staying on the wing, hiding. So I mean, you had this kid Elliot that was like the only outlet. So I don't think it's fair necessarily for him. Um, I mean, just brax tacks. I think I tweeted this. It was a relegation level midfield that started that game, and in some cases it was 8 versus 11. And so that was kind of my freak out. Another problem that I'm starting to see is Trent is starting to be an issue defending. I kind of looked over it versus Mitrovic, versus Fulham getting beast. That happened. He got beat by Zaha in a near post, and they tied Crystal Palace 1-1. It easily could have been 2-1. I mean, Zaha was free on goal and just hit the bar. But he is absolutely standing still and just watching Valencia. Valencia's not even like sprinting. He's just walking past him to get free, and it's Valencia's cross that causes the trouble. So a lot of people got on Van Dijk. I get on Trent for that, and it's Trent has a really stupid ball that he just hits the ball to no one. It's not like Darwin's there. He gives the ball away. And then the ball is headed back to Henderson, and Henderson decides to take a touch with an anvil, and he hits it 8 yards to Martial. So Trent and Henderson were at fault for that goal as well, and yes, it's a problem defensively, but I mean offensively too. I mean he's given more like a hybrid role now. He's not necessarily playing fullback, and the first three games of the season, he's lost the ball 37 times versus Fulham, 27 times
Ooh.
versus Palace, and 24 times. And I mentioned Dallo by comparison lost it 10 times. I think Robertson lost it like 12 times. So it's becoming a problem, and you're starting to see it maybe affect Salah as well because Trent is almost playing in midfield and he's playing centrally. He's not offering Salah overlap runs anymore. Salah is by himself when he gets the ball on the wing, and that's kind of hurting the attack as well. So Kanate would kind of fix some of this. I think Thiago does fix some of this. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of rambling a little bit. I mean, you mentioned there's maybe a little bit more reason to be upbeat. What are your thoughts, at least, so far on Liverpool?
Yeah, I mean the injuries are pretty big. The red card to Nunez too. So there wasn't necessarily a whole lot to choose from. I mean, I would have gone Fabinho in midfield instead of Henderson for sure. But I liked Harvey Elliott. He does have a lot on his shoulders, which is kind of unfair to him. But I thought he was pretty direct at times. He would just get the ball at his feet near the top of the box and just go straight to goal and shoot. And sometimes that was needed. So I thought he was a pretty bright spot. But I mean, I agree with you. You can't have Henderson and Milner on the field starting. I mean, I get it if you're going to bring them off the bench for 10, 20 minutes,
Yes.
but these two guys can't be starting. They're too old. They're too slow. I know they're like locker room guys, but they can't be starting. You're absolutely right. Maybe cup games, and that's it. So like I don't know why Fabinho wasn't in there. Maybe Klopp just wanted to rest him or something, or it's tactical. I don't know.
Shocking. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, it's just
it could be a minutes thing. But
yeah,
there's been this like weird. It's happened online. I don't know why it would affect Klopp, but there's this idea that Henderson's better because Liverpool are more progressive. Like Henderson maybe is more offensive minded in that position, but
yeah,
he doesn't hold where he's supposed to. And his first touch is you can't lose the ball in the middle of the field. That's the reason why I was getting on Fred McTominay last week. It happened
mhm,
the same time this week. Milner when Milner starts, Liverpool do not win games. Like they drop points almost every time. And I'm not exaggerating. Going back to like the
yeah,
2021 season, Klopp's been trying this, and pretty much maybe it's like 97% where it's not it's not either a loss or a tie, but it happens a lot. And then one of the reasons why it was another problem is everyone was just dead set that Navigator was going to play this game, and then right like an hour before the kickoff. Uh, they said, "Oh, he's hurt himself, or he's not fit." And now it's come out that he apparently fell, and he might be out for long term.
yeah,
And this is the reason why people get on him. Like he's a fantastic player. He's maybe he's a more offensive like minded player than someone like N'Golo Kante. I mean, he's very good both defensively and offensively, and it's so no one can slight him when he's actually fit. But just the issue is he's fit for like 12 games a season, and you're paying so much, you're relying so much on this guy because another problem is Liverpool do have some technical players that they could play. Oxlade Chamberlain would be another, but they're just not. They're made of class, and so you
yeah.
can't. You Klopp used to have a midfield of Henderson before his injury. Was actually a fantastic player because he had an engine on him. He's lost that, and Gino Ronaldo he wouldn't lose the ball, and you just don't have that anymore. And so yeah,
Or Cheney, yeah.
I frankly just feel like it really is just one midfielder short. Someone
Mhm.
else. They've been linked to maybe Casado of Brighton. That's probably not going to happen because Brighton will have a gigantic fee. But they're missing someone with legs. Conrad Leimer would be another at Leipzig. I mean, I've been worried about not having someone to replace Thiago, but Henderson is the problem. That right side. I don't think Elliott is the player to do that either because you need someone with legs to track back because Trent's not doing it right now. And so it's a midfield that requires legs. Klopp's whole system is built on that midfield being an engine. Like the way football games are, is it's a game of transitions. And the whole idea is you create transitions by causing turnovers and winning second balls and breaking, or you limit them. And so they don't have a midfield to do that now, and that is the reason why you're seeing the offense stagnate a little bit more. I mean, they're going against blocks. Teams know how to play against them. You can sit
Yeah.
back, and if you win the ball by Trent or Henderson doing something stupid, you can just kick the ball down the right side and give yourself a chance versus like a Gomez or a Nat Phillips with Kanate
Mhm.
out there. So
But at least though this happens with 2 weeks left in the transfer window, so at least
one would
maybe like
think
this will spur Liverpool, yeah, to be like, hey, we need a defensive midfielder like ASAP. So late, like at least it happens now versus if it happened in September, you can't do anything about it. So hopefully this will spur them to buy some players, man. At least one. Like I'm with you. They're one good defensive midfielder away potentially. Or I mean, they get healthy too, and add another defensive midfielder. They should be okay, Ben. I wouldn't be too worried. I mean, they got to get through this injury crisis, no doubt, and keep some of these players healthy in the future. And also, they need to get rid of like Oxlade Chamberlain. How many games has he played in like 4 years?
he's gonna walk.
Yeah,
He's
they
gonna walk
need
next year for free. I think it's his last year in the contract, and there's no way they can extend it. I don't even think they can sell him.
no,
Yeah.
no, they can't probably not. At least just get that wage bill off. Salary off would be helpful. And then they got to figure out what to do with the aging Henderson and Milner. How long are they going to keep them? Klopp likes them. Klopp loves them. So maybe they'll keep around for a while, which I would be okay with if they're not starting games.
I
Coming
mean,
off the bench maybe a little bit
I mean,
and
what's
doing cup games. That's it.
what sucks is like so teams used to. I mean, Liverpool's front three is all about pressing, and teams try to play out from the back, and so that usually that causes a lot of trouble. But what happened basically, and we saw this when Virgil went out in 2021, and we're kind of seeing the same thing now a little bit. Is teams are going long and fact giving their chances to win second balls after going long, and it was just a problem because when if you can win that second ball, you've got space. And this is why getting they were linked to Chirmini. This is why he was needed more than Darwin Nunes, essentially, because Chirmini or Chow Mini apparently is how his name is said. Uh,
Yeah. Hmm.
that's what they said in the when I was watching the Madrid game. He would have solved this. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I think so.
it is what it is. I mean, the one maybe positive and going a little long is Tiago Keita, Tiago Jota and Kanate should be back maybe for the September or October run, and that's when they play Arsenal, City, and Chelsea all in like 3 weeks or 3 or 4 weeks.
Oh,
So if you can turn this around and get basically 9 points in those games, that maybe changes the perspective, like you were saying. So it's not. I mean, it's 3 weeks into the season, but
yeah.
still, it's
It's
not.
only one loss,
It's
two ties,
not.
so it's not.
It's not ideal. So.
Yeah, they need to start winning soon. Yeah.
But that is me being all doom and gloom, and I don't really know a word to rhyme, so I'll allow you to be the opposite with Arsenal, and I guess be Vroom. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, I'm still cautiously optimistic. But yeah, like everything's looking great so far. We're scoring a lot of goals. Like Odegaard wasn't, the highlight of the team the last two games, but he really stepped up in this one, which was good. And he's been good, just hasn't been shining bright, as of late. But man, the defense is coming together. Saliba scored, was really good.
Oh, so
Zinchenko's
good.
been amazing. Shaka has elevated his game. I mean, the only person that's not really playing that well is Saka, and he's still playing well. But I think that has to do with Ben White
I
being
think so
the
too.
fullback behind him.
Yes.
Yeah, instead of a real fullback. So I think Saka will be fine. He hasn't been playing terrible. I'm excited. I am. I still, I think we need maybe one more signing, maybe like another wide player. But if you look at the bench, Smith Rowe, Vieira was on the bench, and
It's strong.
Nketiah. We got a good
Yeah,
squad.
it's
Yeah,
starting to
it's
be
a
strong.
strong bench.
Yeah.
So I'm getting excited. I always get excited about the clean sheets too. So Rams has 2 clean sheets out of 3 games, which is awesome. But we still haven't played like a quote top four team yet. So it'll be interesting to see how this team would play against Tottenham or City. So that'll be interesting to see. But so far it's good, man. Jesus has been great. I know he didn't score, but he got an assist and just is taking people on. And he looks so silky with the ball. I think
Really
he's another
does.
player that he's thriving at being the number 9 finally. I don't think he was that happy with playing different spots under Pep.
Hmm.
And part of the selling point was Arteta was like, "Hey, you're going to be my main striker, and you're not going to play anywhere else." And that was part of the selling point. It really looks to kind of have freed Jesus up, and he's shining so far, man. Him and Zinchenko have been 2 great signings this year. I'm really happy about them.
Yeah, I mean, and another thing too is a lot of people. I don't want to. I guess I'll try to share both points. Some people are trying to really gas Arsenal up right now, and some people are trying to discredit because it's Bournemouth. But I'm going to say the flip side is you play a team that's sitting back, and Bournemouth are like super super tall. You can't just like cross on them. It's not
Mhm.
necessarily easy to break down, and the way that City were able to do it with relative ease, and I think because you had a creator like Jesus that was able to kind of dribble through and to create some problems, it helped with that. But another thing that I noticed is on both goal or the first 2 goals, you saw a run by Martinelli. Where Jesus was able to feed through, which basically set up the goal, and then Ben White actually did do an overlap run for Saka, which helped create the cross that Odegaard was able to get onto. I think that's
Mhm.
really important for Arsenal to have width and to have different options because in the past maybe they haven't maybe they have tried to kind of pass it in a little bit or they weren't necessarily able to create enough and they didn't have that issue at all in this game and I think it's weirdly enough for like a lot of these big teams it's games like this where you drop points it's not necessary because you get hyped up versus like the cities and the Spurs or whatever not necessarily the best examples, but you get hyped up versus like I guess top 8 teams. This can be a place to step up, and they didn't. And you mentioned Jesus, and it's definitely it's one thing to talk about what he's contributing when it comes to creating chances, but even before the first goal, I don't know if you noticed, but a ball is like kicked to him, and he's able to basically hold off a defender that's on his backside. He's able to body him off, and then he takes the ball down with like a feather touch. The ball doesn't
Oh
even
yeah.
leave like 2 feet from him. So he's showing
Mhm.
that he can actually be a player to kick a ball long to, and he's got good hold of play. That was my only
Yeah.
concern about them getting Jesus and playing him in this position. I didn't know he could do that, and
Mhm.
that really does change because that's the reason why you need a center striker is this idea of hold up play. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily the goals; it's being able to keep the ball in a high upfield when you can actually attack. So I think that
Mhm.
was very good. And one thing I wanted to maybe get your thoughts on is I'm starting to see Arsenal is very versatile. Martinelli can either make a run in behind, or he can play kind of centrally. Jesus can kind of go out wide if he needs to. Zinchenko can play in midfield, and Shaka can take his place. Ben White
Mhm.
is normally a center back, but I guess he's doing a job at right back. Maybe at right back, I don't know if Tomiyasu is necessarily at the level where you guys need him to be, but maybe he is. I can't actually say enough about him. But everywhere else, it seems you've got options. You can bring Smith Rowe on versus like boxed in sides if you get into like a final third game.
Mhm.
Vieira is supposed to be a pretty good passer on the ball as well, a creator,
Yeah.
and so maybe so there's just that's what I think is big for you guys. So if I do have a concern, it's that I don't know if you have the squad to necessarily take on a top four or title challenge and Europa, because you're going to be playing on Thursday nights and then flying back Friday, and then have a game on Sunday. That could maybe
Mhm.
get to the legs, but yeah, I mean, do you have any other thoughts?
No, yeah, that's a good point. Squad depth still probably needed, but yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think Arteta kind of carried over from Pep and Man City was, having players that could play in different spots. And like you said, he's picked up some of those players that can do that. Zinchenko, Jesus, White last year, and kind of inherited Chaka, but he can do that too. So yeah, that's brilliant, and I think that really comes down to Arteta, learning under Pep, and kind of analyzing some of the players that can do it and getting them in. Which, at the beginning of the transfer, if you told me we're going to get Zinchenko, I'd be like, no, City's not going to get rid of him. I really didn't think we'd get him. But he's another key player, and he can play all over too. So
And he doesn't lose the
Smith Rowe
ball.
is another one. I mean, yeah, and he doesn't. No, he really doesn't. So yeah, I mean, everything's looking up. They do probably need a signing or two, and get rid of some other players still.
Yeah, see that.
But I'm cautiously optimistic. 3 games in isn't a lot. Last year we hadn't won, and then we ended up fifth. So it can certainly go the other way around.
And
Hopefully not, but
I see they're linked to
still
maybe
optimistic.
Pedro Neto. I mean, would you at Tielemans that doesn't keep going away? But I mean, do those
Yeah.
names kind of interest you, or are you thinking of like something else?
Oh, that would be great. I would love like a Neto would be amazing. But
Mhm.
I kind of would want them to get Jeremy Pino from Villarreal,
Ooh,
but
okay.
I don't know if that's going to happen. He's another young player that is really good, but I think the price tag is kind of set pretty high, so I don't think they'll do that. But I would like one more kind of wide player, just as precaution for injury, and maybe just have a really good, someone running at you with fresh legs off the bench, like a Pino would be awesome. But I mean, Tillman's that won't go away either. He'd be a good player too. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, Neto would be fantastic. So,
Yeah. Another thing to maybe say when I mention how like they're versatile is, I guess they line up in like a 4-2-3-1 formation, but when Arsenal have the ball, it's actually a lot different. Like Party will kind of drop deep and maybe form a back three with like Saliba that allows Ben White to kind of go further up forward. And so, like a lot of these teams don't have someone like Party who can sit back and actually dictate play, in a way that he does forward passes in a way that like a lot of like CDMs like Jorginho doesn't do balls like what I was seeing that day. And Saliba is a cheat code. He does look a little bit like Van Dijk when Liverpool got
mm,
him because he's very strong on the ball, but it's hard to get past him. He's got very good recovery pace, and he's strong, and he's good in the air. That's
mm,
been a fan. I don't get why. Maybe Arteta was some mad genius by playing him in France these last 2 years, but he looks, I guess, seasoned now, and you guys are
Yeah,
going to, as long as he stays healthy, you guys are going to definitely enjoy him. In my opinion, I think he maybe could push
yeah, I
for a
hope
France
so.
spot or in Qatar, maybe starting.
Yeah, it's looking that way. And last year too, he was the best young player in France too. So I thought maybe we could have used him last year, but yeah, I guess you can't argue with it. If he's playing this well now, maybe the 2 years in France was worth it.
And so that is Arsenal, and now we'll get into maybe another club in turmoil in Chelsea versus Leeds, which is funny because we kind of talked them up a little bit last week. But that is the way it goes. No N'Golo Kante. So Conor Gallagher started instead. We saw Reece James at right center back again. And for Leeds, there was no Bamford. And Rodrigo started at striker. First of all, when I looked at this, I was kind of worried about Leeds because,
Mhm.
Rodrigo's actually gotten off to a fantastic start goal scoring wise.
Oh yeah.
But he was tried at striker a little bit last year when Beasley was coaching him, and it didn't necessarily go too well. That's the reason why they kept going back to Dan James. But yeah, it gets started with Brendan Aronson just making Bre- Edward Mendy almost retiring him. I don't want to necessarily go that far, but made him look foolish.
Oh
We got
yeah.
on De Gea last week, and this was worse. Then Rodrigo with a head over Reece James to go in, and then Jack Harrison, who we'll maybe get into is kind of maybe a little underrated, under the radar. It's a better way to put it. But yeah, I mean, probably the worst thing about the Liverpool thing is I was really gassed to kind of talk about Chelsea, and basically being like, oh, they're in shambles, and now it's not necessarily as fun. But let's get started with Leeds first. So no Patrick Bamford mentioned, and I don't know. It's kind of cool to kind of see them just go in score three versus Chelsea. A lot of people in the UK media I noticed were kind of you know being down on Leeds to start the season. I don't know if it's because Marsh being American or not. Marsh did go out and got two Americans in the market, Tyler Adams and Aronson. And maybe people were just like, "Oh, what a foolish American! What does he know what he's doing?" Maybe he knows a lot because the two guys he's brought in have been really really good. So
Mhm.
let's maybe start with that. I mean, what did you see that Leeds did that just really caused Chelsea issues?
Well, yeah, I would throw Raka into the mix too because
Mhm.
he didn't play much last year, but he played at Bayern. So they got him for like 10 million. So
Yes.
him and Adams as a double pivot, it really allows Harrison, James, if he's playing, and Aronson to really go up and attack. And you don't have to worry about coming back because Adams covers a shit ton of ground. He's probably at the tops right now for most I guess yards run or whatever meters run or whatever
Hmm.
they're doing. But Raka too is great. But what I saw from them was just from the get go they were pressing and attacking. It was kind of like the Newcastle performance where Marsh was like, we're not going to sit back. We're going to go and attack them. On paper they're a better team, so let's get in their face and let's see if they can deal with our press. And I mean, clearly Chelsea could not. Mendy messes up, and Aaronson's just chasing a lost cause basically, and gets lucky, gets rewarded, which you like to see. That huge amounts of effort on Leeds' part. And it was good to see them kind of be back after kind of a down year last year.
Yeah.
And part of that was Harrison did not play well last year. The year before, he was fantastic. And so far this year, he's looking pretty good. So maybe that will really help too in the future. But again, having Adams and Roca behind him really kind of lets him go up and attack and not worry about coming back as much as he might have last year, and Aronson too. Just the transition between defensive midfielder to Rodrigo at striker or Bamford or whoever it may be is awesome, and it's just great to watch a bunch of Americans doing well. Honestly,
Hmm.
Leeds might be like must not miss TV in the future, especially if you are watching in the USA because it's awesome. It's great to have them playing well before the World Cup, which is just around the corner too.
Yeah, and I mean, frankly, it's kind of unique how they lost someone like Beasley, and they were able to identify and bring in a coach that kind of plays similar. I mean, he's tweaked a few things, but the idea is kind of the same. And yeah, I think it's great that that Leeds haven't necessarily lost that identity. I mean, you mentioned a few players that they brought in. Sinister would be another. He hasn't necessarily
Oh
featured yet.
yeah,
But it's looking like either Marsh or the director of football there definitely knows what they're doing because maybe the main reason why I think people were down on Leeds is you lose someone like Calvin Phillips, who they didn't have like for last season. They almost got relegated, and
Hmm.
they lost Rafina, who was I think their
Yeah.
leading goal scorer last year, and we're
Hmm.
seeing what he's doing at Barcelona. So to be able to replace them, at least so far, I think is yeah. If you're a Leeds fan, you have to be over the moon. And you mentioned Jack Harrison, and another thing that's kind of cool is this guy is actually he went to Wake Forest, like he went to college
Yeah.
in America. I think he was like an MLS draftee. Um,
Hmm. I think was he New York? I want to
I think
say.
so. Yeah, because he was a City
Yeah.
player, right? Yeah.
Yeah. City. Yeah. City player. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I mean, he's already off to I think 4 assists on the year. This was finally his
Wow.
goal. He might even be leading in assist. And the year before, he finished with 8 goals and I think 1 assist. But prior to that, he was 8 and 8.
Yeah.
And so you get close to a 10 goals and 10 assists player. That's quite special, at least especially from the wide area. And so
Mhm.
it's great to see him back off to a good start. And like you said, maybe this if there's maybe one negative is I don't necessarily think they do a good job. Do a good enough job controlling the ball. They do seem to be way too direct. Even when they had like the 3-0 lead, they were still trying to do kind of what we saw with the United. They were trying to go long and try to I think eventually that's going to catch up in the legs because I think they only had like 200 and some passes together, and I think it was 71%. So maybe
Mm.
find a way to control games a little bit more. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, other than that, it's just it was great to wake up and just that was so much fun. Uh,
Yeah. That was a good game. Oh, it was funny to see too that Tuchel afterwards said that he thought Chelsea was the better of the two teams, which I don't know what game he was watching because I mean Leeds just dominated them. Leeds was a lot better. It looked like Chelsea like hadn't even woken up. So that was funny to see too. Maybe I don't know. Maybe Tuchel's just trying to take some of the blame off of his players, kind of relieve
mhm.
that stress, I guess. Because we've seen him do it before, but yeah, just kind of outlandish. Honestly, Leeds were the better team for the whole 90.
Yeah, I mean, it's just we mentioned how United turned around and did what they did. I mean, Chelsea thoroughly outplayed Spurs last week. I don't think that's necessarily an opinion. I think that was kind of the consensus.
Yeah,
And you turn around and
that's
kind
what
of
it's.
kind of do this. I have my kind of opinions on this or kind of thoughts, but I'm kind of curious to see what you think. I mean, what do you think was the main difference for them to just turn around and be so much different?
I don't know. It could have been. It could have been Conte not in there.
Yes.
I love Gallagher. I kind of want him to be, maybe at a mid-table team starring
Hmm.
instead of this like off the bench kind of thing. But he got thrown a start here by Tuchel, and he wasn't bad. But I think Conte might just be a little bit more stable there. I don't know. And then
I think you're spot on in here. Yeah.
yeah, and then I kind of don't. I don't know if I really like Reece James as your right center back either.
Mm.
Um, just I don't know. Maybe Aspilicueta could be better defensively there. But Koulibaly I think was pretty good until the two yellows and Silva was pretty solid. But I mean Koulibaly for just coming over from Napoli seems pretty good so far. But they also need a striker. I don't think Havertz is going to cut it for him. I really don't. Sterling was probably unlucky not to score early.
Yeah.
But I mean, I Sterling with a real striker would be interesting to see. Someone like Lukaku. That'd be interesting to see him with Sterling. Lukaku in form, but I don't know. I just don't think Havertz is going to get it done for me. I kind of would want him as my backup striker. I kind of want, if I'm Chelsea, go out and buy a proper striker now. And it looks like maybe they'll get Fafana too, which will help. Maybe that can push Reece James up to Loftus Cheek spot, and that could help if they got Fafana. But
Hmm.
I don't know. I don't think Havertz can get it done up there. He hasn't shown that he can, regularly for the last couple of years since they got him from Leverkusen.
Yeah. I mean, and I think you're right to focus on Conte, really, because what I kind of saw is it seemed very early on Leeds recognized that he was the pressing trigger. So anytime he got the ball, surround him, and maybe he turned the ball over, and that pretty much did happen. And another problem is Conor Gallagher is more of an attacking midfielder. He's kind of playing in this central spot out of necessity. But he
Hmm.
was also leaving Jorginho stranded, and just anytime Leeds were able to kind of break on him, they were having fun with that. Uh, and Thiago at his age, he don't you don't want runners necessarily coming at him either. But
Hmm.
what's kind of weird is Tuchel did make some comments. People kind of laughed at. I kind of do see a little bit where he's coming from because before the Mendy era, I thought Chelsea actually were almost borderline dominating. They just weren't necessarily testing the keeper, but they were getting into good spots. You mentioned Sterling. Sterling scored, but it was offsides by like a hair. Sterling had a couple of efforts earlier that kind of went outside. Havertz had a shot.
Hmm.
Mount forced a save. I think that was the one save. But Leeds were not able to keep the ball at all in that first 20 minutes, and it was Chelsea were starting to get a pretty good hold on the game. It's just that Mendy era just really enlightened the crowd, and maybe it gave Leeds a little bit more energy, and then they were able to get something off a set piece. But
Yeah, because if Sterling scores there, like who knows how the rest of the game goes with Chelsea one up early on. It could have been a completely different game.
yeah, I mean, another thing too is like someone like Conte, that would have been able to get the ball like we saw with Spurs, that would able to get the ball in a tight area, turn and keep it, or progress upfield with it. This is where someone like Frankie De Jong would make immediately make Chelsea better. Um,
Mhm.
is Conor Gallagher was trying to do that, trying to turn on the ball and was losing it, and he wasn't able to necessarily make the best passes either. He's a forward-minded attack player. He's not necessarily a possession guy, and
Yeah.
that was really what they needed. Like he would work in like a 4-3-3 with like he'd be able to have some freedom, or maybe as a 10 somewhere. But yeah, uh, you mentioned Havertz, and we kind of talked about him last week. I'm starting to think Havertz is not a striker. Uh, the,
Yeah.
the idea of like a false nine, like Firmino, that used to where you would maybe drop back into midfield and kind of create for others. I can maybe see that, or I can see him playing with a striker. So him actually being like your 10. Maybe play him instead of Mount because I'm starting to see Mount kind of struggle. I'm not seeing Mount thread
Mhm.
passes. Like Chelsea are like the third worst in the league for creating chances. So it's not even that they're not testing the keeper with bad shooting. They're not creating shooting chances with all this like
Mhm.
possession that they're dominating with. And I think you're right about Ruben Loftus-Cheek. He had a chance to score. He was given the ball. I think Sterling on a plate, and took like three touches, took too long, and then I think the shot was like blocked.
Locked, yeah.
He's so someone like I think they're linked to Gordon as well. I mean, apparently Chelsea's gonna spend $400 million this window, uh, but you're not. Reece James helps in some like defensive areas, like it helps. And on the one off, like for Son last week, that can't be your long term thing because you're not getting the
Yeah.
best out of Reece James. So I agree. I
Mhm.
agree 100% on that as well. Um,
Yeah.
I mean,
But what I will say, you brought up like Havertz maybe playing like an attacking mid or false nine. He kind of reminds me, at least like size wise,
Muller.
looks wise, of Mueller. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Mhm.
And I mean, and if you could kind of play him behind a good striker like Mueller, he can kind of be the link up guy. I think maybe I don't know if it's like they're both German that make me
He's
think that,
he's
but yeah, that
exactly
could be a fantastic
he's
idea.
exactly who Bayern should buy. Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he could definitely be like that tall, good finisher, but also a really good provider that Mueller kind of is behind Luo for a long time. But
Yeah.
he's still kind of. I think they played him at striker and he didn't do so well, so they kind of moved him back. So
I think it's just history. He doesn't fit this setup and formation that Tuchel is relying on. He's forced to kind of
mm,
lead the line by himself, and then behind him you've got quote unquote two creative tens. Well, not that was with Werner. Now you have Sterling. Sterling can score, but Mount is kind of struggling a little bit now. I mean, he had a good season last year, so I mean, it's early.
mm,
So I don't know. That's kind of what I was thinking, but yeah, it seems like they've already spent like 150 million. It still seems they're like 3 or 4 signings away. They need a
yeah,
press-resistant CM if Conte and Kovacic can't go. They need a
mm,
DM that's not Jorginho because Jorginho does not have legs anymore. They need a
mm,
backup ring back for the right side in case something happens to Reece James like we saw last year. And they need a right center
yeah,
back so you can play Reece James in the position he needs. And
mm,
frankly, I wasn't necessarily thinking about this either, but maybe I'm now. They did sign an American keeper that plays for the Chicago Fire. Uh,
mm,
Maybe Mendy's job might need to be questioned going forward because this isn't the first time he's made a mistake like this, and
mm.
so that may be something to look at going forward. I'd say.
Yeah, if he has a poor game coming up this weekend, yeah, maybe Slonina gets in, right? Is that his name, Slonina?
Oh, you're
Oh
better at
wait,
that. You're better at that than I am.
I think he's on. He might be on loan though, because they do have Kepa as the backup.
Okay. Well, I know they get him in January.
Oh, that's what. Okay, so he's staying with Chicago
I
Fire
think so.
until.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha, gotcha.
There's a lot of hype on this. I don't know if it's American hype
There
or
it
not,
is.
but yeah.
Yeah, it might be American hype. It's hard to tell, but
And another thing that's kind of funny is with the Koulibaly red. I don't know who they necessarily. It might be Leicester. I don't know who they play next week, but you're only going to have basically one senior center back in Thiago Silva, who's like 37 or 38, in a
Mhm.
system that's reliant on a back three. It's kind of been weird squad building. I don't know if that's Tuchel's. I mean,
That's Bill Quits is gonna have to
they've,
play.
they've just had new a new ownership that turned over. So there's a lot of people that on the directing side they had someone named Maria who was in charge of all this. They've had to ship people out, so it's a mess. It's a mess right now for Chelsea. I mean,
Yeah,
the owner is willing to spend. You just need to have someone to give him better ideas on what to spend on. I guess I don't know.
yeah, it's a lot of this going around. It feels like
Yeah,
spending on the wrong players.
everyone got a visit from the Tooth Fairy and left something under their pillow except for Liverpool, apparently. Um,
Well, yeah, at least y'all haven't made any bad investments. Like I always point to Arsenal tying Pepe for $70 million. Like that's another terrible one.
Liverpool actually liked the Pepe at one point. Um, I mean, we'll see how Darwin Nunes works out. I'm maybe a little bit more hopeful, but I also think it might take some time. I'd rather see Jota when Jota gets back. But that's just kind of
Yeah,
that's enough about Liverpool. Let's get into what was maybe the second best game of the weekend, and that was Brentford versus Fulham. And unfortunately for our friend Jeremy, it does end 2-3. An absolute wild game. Fulham scored in the first 2 minutes of the game. Bobby Reed, or Del Corva Reed, I think he's changed his name. And
yeah,
then
yeah.
Paulina gets a goal off a set piece. It's another set piece where Brentford have given up a goal. Jeremy was saying that they did this all preseason, and I think they gave away one versus Leicester in that first game.
I did.
Um,
Yep, yep.
and then Norgard has an awesome goal, also from a corner kick, so it kind of cancels each other out. Right before the half too, and Brentford I thought were being thoroughly outplayed before this, so this kind of changed things around. And then Tony finally scored. He put the ball in the net 3 times, but he finally got this one to count. And then just at the 90th minute, Mitrovic was able to get one in. And Mitrovic apparently really likes jumping over right fullbacks to head the ball in, because he did that with Trent. But yeah, let's kind of get started with Fulham, because I, it was a crazy start. It reminded me a little bit of like how they played Liverpool, because it was high intensity. They were pressing and forcing turnovers, and breaking an attack with numbers. Um, and what was kind of weird is after they got the second goal, they almost did the opposite. They kind of sat back and basically allowed Brentford to get back into the game. It was almost like they had their heads down after Brentford conceded. So I mean, what were your thoughts about all this?
Yeah, ironically too for Brentford, it was kind of like their first game against Leicester, where they were down 2-0
Mm,
and were able to come
very good
back.
shout.
So, I mean, I like the ability to come back, obviously, but man, it would be nice for them to to score the first goal and not concede the first goal, number one, and then it would be nice for them to just shore up the defense on corners because it's already 2 goals that they've conceded from corners in only 3 games, and we know from last year that that's a big problem. So I really don't know what's going to solve that except maybe like Ajer comes back and Pinnock comes back and they're people that have played with the team and you can partner them with Jansen more, just be a little bit
Jansen
better
not
on
in the
those
best game.
pieces. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. Yeah, I don't know. And like you'd think me would be good on corners too. So I don't know. Maybe it's like Hickey and Henry are kind of smaller when they're in there defending. I don't know, but they got to figure out defending on corners because 2 in 3 games is it's not good. And you could point to that kind of lost in the game here. I know Mitrovic scored late, and that's what kind of lost in the game. But really, if you're a little bit better on corners, maybe this one ends 2-2. So they got to figure it out. But other than that, I think they're in a good place. I really do. The bench is starting to get a little bit more depth. Lewis Player's been playing well. I think Damsgaard is going to start midweek in the cup game, so we'll see what he's got
Oh, that
because
would
he
be
could be
good.
a big signing too.
Because
Yeah.
Jeremy was
So
worried because he didn't make the bench, even though he made the bench
yeah.
for United. He didn't make the bench this game,
hmm
so he was worried
Yeah. I
if
don't know
there
what
was some kind
happened.
of injury. So that's good.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I was kind of curious about that too. But yeah, yeah, I think he was going to start. I think they play like Coventry City or something. So
Hmm.
it'll be interesting to see what he's got. And they're starting to get a little bit of depth, and when they get their center backs back too, it's going to just be even more depth. So I think they'll be okay. We're always worried about like that sophomore season in the Premier League is notoriously bad. So we'll see. But things are looking pretty good. I think they've done some really good transfer business this year, and they've kind of gotten players that they think will really work. Not just going out and buying big names. They're
Hmm.
they're going and getting players that will fit their system. I think, which is always a positive too. And they haven't necessarily overpaid for people either. So
Yeah, and it's actually funny. Jeremy texted me immediately after the game. Basically said the story of this game is that because you brought up the Leicester game, and I think that was very excellent. Is you did see the same thing happen where they were able to come back 2 goals, and it seemed like Brentford had just retaken momentum. But the is it Andre Silva? The Fulham coach did not do what Brendan Rodgers did.
yeah,
He actually did make some
Marco
subs.
Marco
Marco Silva. He brought on this guy Tom Carney. He brought on a fullback, and Babu,
and Babu.
who's actually the one that ended up getting the game winning assist. So he actually made some
Mhm.
changes when Rodgers just didn't.
Just
Uh,
made the bad change of
yeah,
taking
and
what's his face in the field.
I mean, Mitrovic is on to a crazy start to the season. So I mean, we kind of I don't want to say we slighted this guy, but he was in the league when they got dropped the last time. But at the same time, Scott Parker, I think their coach at the time, didn't play
Mm.
him, which is kind of weird. And it
Yeah.
seems he's like the focal point now. So
Yeah, he scored like 40 goals in the championship last year. But I do like if you kind of cover him and mark him and keep him off the score sheet, I do kind of get the sense of like who else is going to score,
yeah.
at least consistently.
Hmm.
But they were able to do it in this game with Polina and Reed. But, consistently, if Mitrovic is, like double teamed, who's going to provide the goals? But, it was a good game. I think they'll be okay. But they are going to have to ride Mitrovic, I feel like.
Yeah, and I think I saw that they were maybe linked to Neil Mapai. But I agree that it seems like
Ooh.
they may be short in that department. But if you're Brentford, you mentioned how it's another case where it's glass half empty, half full. I mean, Tony looked amazing, but
Mhm.
it's kind of weird how this is now the second time in a row where Frank has completely changed formations. He didn't go with what he did versus United. He went back to this 4-3-3. And what's interesting is the two midfielders, Jensen and De Silva, were not necessarily great at tracking back. And I think we saw that maybe for the first goal. Also, Pontus Jensen was not very good on that first goal with his. But he had like a Henderson moment. He had a bad touch, gave the ball away, and then tracked back, and then got fooled by Mitrovic on a cut, which was just that was a mess. But it is kind of interesting how he's not. Frank is, I guess, maybe being more offensive minded. I think last year he was only doing a back three, so it's interesting to see
Mhm.
him go with a back four and try with three attackers. But maybe it backfired a little bit. It's like Mads Roslov played last week and he didn't this week. So
Mhm.
uh, and Jeremy was just furious that Yanelt wasn't picked. He thinks Yanelt would have maybe been better than De Silva because De Silva is also kind of lazy on the first goal.
Yeah.
And what's kind of funny
Yeah, I
is
think
oh,
No, I was just gonna say, I think just De Silva, with the 2 goals in the last 2 games, he's just kind of forced his way into the lineup. But
yeah.
yeah, I
Mhm.
agree. I think Yana would have been a better choice. But I think Fred just saw De Silva, it's kind of playing on fire right now. So I think that's why he started him. But
Uh-huh.
yeah, maybe we'll see Yana next time, because like you said, it's just North back there. Jensen and De Silva don't really track back as much as you would like. So yeah, that's a good point.
And one of the better passers is Janssen, and Janssen had a fantastic game versus United. But maybe it seems
Oh yeah.
he fits better in that back three system with some cover behind him, because he was kind of struggling a little bit at least in that first half. And what's funny is he actually was starting to get more on the ball as Fulham was sitting back. I mean, Fulham were pressing like mad in that first half, and they like sat back after they got the 2 goal lead. That basically allowed Brentford to have a little bit more of the ball, and the more Janssen was able to get touches, the more Tony was able to get some looks. And what's kind of funny is he got hooked in that second half when I don't think he maybe should have. So
Yeah. Yeah, true.
So I guess that's maybe it with Brentford, and we'll move on to Spurs, and not necessarily liking where we are with time. So this one ends 1-0 with a goal from Kane. The shocking about stat about this is Wolves did get 20 shots. It's just three on target. So they
Mhm.
basically doubled Spurs in shots. Spurs were able to get four on target. But I guess you can say 3 points is 3 points. It's early, and able to still get 3 points. The game was early too. It was the early game on Saturday. So yeah, I guess the thing I'll say is it's very interesting how this is. Well, this is another team they're going against a back five, but it's also this is twice now where we've kind of seen Son kind of struggle to get into the game. So,
Yeah.
uh, what were you thinking? What are your thoughts right now in Spurs?
Yeah. I would be a little bit worried about Son just because the last two games he's kind of been taken out of the contest. You know, that's not great. But I mean, I think he'll bounce back. But I would be worried because two games in a row could easily become like a poor form slide. But he could easily bounce off it too. But I don't know. This is just a weird game. I'm kind of a little worried about Wolves. They haven't been that great attacking, this year. I don't think have they scored a real goal. I think they might have gotten an own goal, and that's it. I don't know. I can't remember. But they did have Jimenez coming back. He made an appearance off the bench, so
Mhm.
that should certainly help for sure. But yeah, I agree with you. I think for Tottenham, it's a good point. I mean, it's 3 points. It's a good 1-0 win. Like you said, it's just hard to break down the back five, and then you got some good midfielders too in the center of the pitch with Nunez, Matinho, and Neves. They're hard to break down like that. So I think Tottenham would be happy. Conte's always happy with a clean sheet, but they've got to get Kulusevski and Son more involved because Kulusevski didn't have the best game necessarily either.
Mhm.
So
S-
if you kind of shut down one of them, they kind of struggle to score. It seems like, but they still they can still grind out results like the tie last week when Son was shut down,
So
and the win this week. So
yeah. So I think a problem that they're having is teams know that Emerson Royal isn't really going to beat them with the ball. Like he is a wing back that is just going to basically run down the sideline, maybe cross it. He's not necessarily going to cut
mm,
inside and link up with Kulishevsky. And
mm,
Kulishevsky apparently likes to be kind of a touchline player as well. And what you're not seeing people kind of show for the ball nearly as much. It's really Kane. And so if you know that, and one thing we should say is Wolves midfield midfield trio of Matinho, Nunes, and Mateus Nunes, which they were able to get, which damn you Liverpool,
mm.
and Neves were very very good, and they kind of knew to mark Kane out of the game. Anytime he got the ball, he was pressured, and didn't necessarily give the ball away, but it was just they weren't able to necessarily get anything going. So maybe it's just like back fives. Back fives are the kind of the way to beat Spurs, and
Yeah,
not a ton of teams play back fives. But yeah, it seemed what we said last week is kind of the same thing. They need in these kind of like locked in games, they need a more dynamic midfielder, I think, to kind of create. It can't just be Kane.
yeah, I agree. Because when Kane drops deep too, who's your striker up top now? And that was kind of the knock sometimes with Kane last year. So yeah, that's a good point. If he drops deep, he's good at linking up, but who's going to be up top at the striker spot when he drops back?
Hmm. And it's kind of interesting. I saw maybe a bit of a rumor that they got this guy Jed Spence from Nottingham Forest. He maybe think he could maybe slot in instead of Royal, maybe offer a little bit something different. And
I would like to see that. Yeah.
there's some kind of rumors that he might get loaned out. Conte isn't necessarily the biggest fan of him, so I don't know if that's
He,
gossip or not, but that is something I
I don't
saw.
know.
Uh,
He wasn't even on the bench in this
yeah,
one too. So yeah, that could be why. Excellent.
and then moving on to West Ham Brighton. This game wasn't necessarily the most pleasing on the eye. I mean, Brighton had 11 shots, two on target. West Ham 13 and three. And so we get goals from McAllister with PK. Another case where Welbeck is able to cause backlines absolute fits, and then Trossard was able to get a second. And it's very interesting to see how different or how basically Potter has turned Brighton into basically being one of the best away sides in the league. I think I saw a stat about that, and they're just hard to break down. They're not necessarily the most offensive minded, but they keep the ball, and they're just tactically very good. I don't know if you kind of notice this, but um, one thing Potter did is he started playing Trossard as wing back, and then he took out. I don't know if he took out Welbeck, but he ended up bringing on one of their new signings, Estupiñán, I think from Villarreal,
Mhm.
and he moved Trossard kind of forward, and that's the reason why they were able to get the second goal. And
Yeah, I
so,
think he took out Liliana and put
oh, that,
Trossard
that
where
was it. Yeah, yeah,
I was.
good call.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think yeah, it's the attacking mid,
I mean,
which he
so
did. Trossard was great there too.
so do you have any thoughts at least on Brighton or West Ham right now?
Yeah, I'm a little worried about Moyes at West Ham. To be honest with you,
Hmm.
so far they really haven't played well, and what's really worrying is that Antonio and Bowen haven't gotten going at all. And last year, they're just a huge part of the success offensively in the attack, and they haven't done anything so far this year, which is really worrying. I mean, we've talked about maybe Antonio was looking kind of tired. Um, I mean, it's never a good thing to be looking tired in the beginning of the season.
Hmm.
So I don't know if they can get Bowen and Antonio going. I think it could be a long season for Moyes, but I mean, they did buy Kerr from PSG. He was immediately thrust to the lineup and gave up a PK.
Not the best
But you
debut.
think he'd be, yeah, but you think he would be getting better
Yeah,
because they lost
he could
Aguirre,
he could be a good signing for
unfortunately.
them.
But yeah, and they do have like Skamaka and some other players, Cornet. So I feel like with this team, it's kind of like Villa, and they have a lot of talent. If they don't start winning, Moyes could potentially be gone or on the hot seat if he's not already. So
Yeah,
we'll see. I don't know
I
because
mean,
if you're being backed and not picking up points, that's not good.
I was weirdly not that high on West Ham to start the season. Uh, they made a couple signings, but I don't think they have enough in midfield to control games. And I think teams, it's a different league this year than maybe in the past couple years. You know, bottom I don't want to say bottom teams, but so many of these like lower, like I guess other 14 teams you could say have a lot of gifted players that you can't just run at them and kind of win the ball back. Teams can keep the ball now, and that you're seeing that with Brighton. But one thing that's kind of weird is they've already started playing midweek games. So they played
Yeah,
Thursday night Viborg, and Corne Skamaka is featured and scored. I think Bowen scored as well. But Bowen played, Sufal and Suchik played that night, and I think I thought they all three had like heavy legs. Because it's not just the playing; it's also the traveling as well.
yeah.
So that could be an issue for them. I don't know if their squad is deep enough or strong enough to handle two fronts.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah, because last year was kind of the same with the Europa League. They went pretty far, and they could tell they were getting a little leggy in the Premier League
yep.
from that. So yeah, if you're going to be in Europa or Conference League or Champions League, you got to have some depth for sure because Premier League's really hard on its own, and you add in midweek games, it's very demanding. That's for sure.
I don't want to go as far as to say it's the Super League, but when you've got a team like Nottingham Forest that is spending 150 million net value or net spending, and your match just one club that's a promoted club is basically spending what basically the max amount in some actual leagues in Europe. That is eye popping, and I think we're starting to see that in the quality that's showing. So
Yeah, yeah, and well, it's kind of a little bit, I guess, in contrast to the free spending Forest, but it seems like Brighton just kind of pull out these players from nowhere.
yeah,
Like,
you
I mean,
lose Cucurella, you
Casado,
bring in Stepien.
Cucurella, yeah,
Stepien looks
uh
great.
huh, and you're worried about, I was really worried about Basuma being gone, and Casado's been amazing,
I would like this
and
guy.
they kind of, yeah, me too. I mean, I think any team would, and they kind of, they come out of nowhere. So I think Potter has done a really good job. They got Cole too. He's a young center back that could be good. So yeah, I mean, I think Potter's done a really good job with Brown, and they're always going to be hard to break down too. And I look at them and it's like nothing necessarily scares me attacking wise. Yet I'm still frightened by this Brighton team.
Yeah, if they do lose Welbeck, you don't have his runs to kind of stretch back lines. Then you get maybe into an issue. But if they're going to sell
Yeah,
Melne, maybe they can upgrade there. So
yeah,
yeah. So all right, we're kind of going a little over. So what we're going to do is maybe group these three games together. So we're not necessarily going to talk a whole lot of Southampton, Palace, or Forest. But we are going to spend a little time to talk about Leicester, Aston Villa, and Everton. And the reason why I'm going
Yeah.
to do this is I think these three clubs are kind of in similar situations, and most specifically with their managers. So, and I think I mean, these three clubs I think had their sights maybe challenging for Europe at the start of the
Yeah.
season. So I
Mhm.
don't know, Rex. I guess we'll get started there. Maybe of the three managers, who do you think should maybe be most worried about their job security at the moment?
Oh, so I mean, I would definitely, for me, it would be Gerard just because of the like, the wealth of talented players that he has. Like Rogers,
Mhm.
in comparison, I think Leicester's bought a backup keeper, and that's all they've brought in this year so far. And then when you look at like Villa, I mean, they have Wendy, Bailey, Watkins, Ramsey, Kamara, McGinn. I mean, they're loaded. They have Ings, Douglas Luiz on the bench. Coutinho was on the bench. So I am more worried about Gerard just because he has a boatload of attacking talent. Not just the starting 11, but on the bench too.
And looks
And
like
they're still not doing well.
they're about to add it. So I'll actually do a little plug for myself. I mentioned they should maybe go get Ishmael Assar, and it looks like they maybe actually done it.
Mm.
So that's another option for Gerard to kind of play with.
Yes.
That'll intrigue me to see how they play because right now it seems they when they attack they're very narrow. Like only the width is coming from the fullbacks, and what you saw versus Palace is when Digna and Cash
Gosh.
go way too forward, they get exposed to the back, and so you saw like just basically similar to what happened with Liverpool. Zaha was able to just get free, and basically with the two kicks of the game, like the ball went from being in one end of the field to basically Villa having to get the ball out of the net.
Mhm.
So one thing that's kind of sucks for Villa is Gerard kind of recognized that Tyrone Mings isn't necessarily the guy he wants. He used to be the captain. He took the captain away, and
Yeah.
he's now forced to kind of play him now because the guy they brought in, Diego Carlos, uh,
Yeah.
apparently has a pretty bad injury. So they might have to make
Mhm.
another signing on top of this to try to fix the back end issues as well. But I kind of agree. I think out of these three, maybe Rogers would be a shout. But they've spent so much money. Villa spent so much money where it's like either you do it now or you have to give them to the World Cup. Because
Yeah.
you can't spend all this money and just get rid of it. I would assume you would spend this money
Mhm.
because you at least believe in him. So
Yeah. So he's Lampard. I mean, Gerard has got to get going soon and give the board a little bit of hope because yeah, you can't have a board that spends a lot of money and they have the players that they have and they're not getting the results. That's just disaster for the manager. So I think definitely Gerard because he's been backed and the owners aren't going to be happy if they're spending their money and you're not doing anything with it.
and another thing I'm seeing is, at least in this Palace game, John McGinn and Ramsey were not tracking back. And John McGinn, he's got a little Henderson in him. He loses the ball a lot for being your captain,
Mhm.
and he's being played instead of Douglas Luiz. And I get the idea of leadership. Maybe he's great at directing traffic and telling people where to go on the field. But he's not a better footballer than Douglas Luiz. So I think
Yeah.
that's being an issue as well. And Jacob Ramsey, kind of disappointed in his start to the season. He's
Mhm.
someone I rate, but at the same time, he is young, and
Yeah.
it's one of those things where yeah, he's a player that likes to make runs in midfield and kind of be attack minded. It's he, it's a lot to kind of take on to because I don't think he was a full starter for them last year. And
No.
yeah, he's kind of struggling maybe to that. So I don't know, just something to maybe watch.
Mhm.
For Leicester, I mean, they're the league worst in 8 goals conceded. Um,
Mm.
that looks like they're going to sell Fafana. Looks like we keep mentioning Tillemans. Um, I think a team should actually go get Ndidi if they're going to be selling. I mean, what's happened to Leicester?
Yeah, I don't know. I think too. Um, I think when Schmeichel left, he's kind of the heart of the team, and he left.
That's good.
And
That's a very good
I
shout.
mean, I think Ward is he's a starter for Wales, so he's not like terrible. But I mean, you saw him make that terrible mistake against Arsenal. I don't know. I just don't like it when like the heart of the team leaves and you don't really replace him with a higher class goalkeeper. But at the same time, like Leicester hasn't been replacing anyone. They haven't spent anything at all. So I guess for me that gives Rodgers a little bit of extra time. The fact that he hasn't been back, I think the fans will maybe be they won't be upset with. I mean, they will be upset with Rodgers, but they'll probably be more upset with Board because they're like, hey, we're losing players, and no one's being brought in. So how can you be good when you're losing good players and replacing them with good, capable
But if you're
players?
shipping players out, it means you're basically starting anew. Wouldn't you want to start anew with a manager?
Yeah, true, and have him bring in his players. Yeah,
Yeah, it's nervy times for Leicester because I think even Everton at least seems something from that part. I just don't think they have enough quality. But
yeah.
you're kind of seeing some kind of identity. You're seeing consistent performances. You're not seeing that with Leicester. Um,
Hmm.
and so to kind of wrap things up, I do think we should mention Palace because Palace have gotten off to a fantastic start. It wasn't an
Yeah, looking good.
easy thing to start with Arsenal, Liverpool, and Aston Villa, and they are able to get 4 points out of those games. Um, they lost Conor Gallagher, and they've been able
Mhm.
to kind of, I don't want to say replace him, but it seems like Vieira's been able to find a way to kind of work around that. And man,
Yeah.
has Zaha gotten off to a good start.
Oh,
So
he's been great.
yeah,
Yeah, he's been fantastic, and I'm glad to see Eze coming back too from that Achilles
for
injury
real.
because he
Yeah.
was really good. Yeah, he was good before that, and that's like a really bad injury. So it's good to see him back too. And now they're starting to get some options on the bench too. Elise, Edouard. If you start one, you have the other one as an option later. So it's looking good. They're going to be a tough team to beat, I think.
Yeah, I mean, just again, Jeremy like texted me and he like looked at. I think he just looked at Palace's bench and he was like, "How like Palace is supposed to be a team that's supposed to struggle," and it just seems there's talent everywhere in this league right now.
Yeah,
And we're just
their hits is crazy.
and so I think that's kind of it. We went over a little bit, but Rex, thank you again for joining me. And yeah, I mentioned last week I was
Yeah, it's fun.
excited for the league, and a little less excited now. But like, excited to maybe see if someone's going to challenge City. It'd be cool to see it be your team. So we'll see if that pans
Well,
out.
yeah, I'll take it. I'll take it, and it's good to see Leeds is in third place. It's awesome, and when you look at the bottom of the table, United, Chelsea's in 12th. So it's interesting because Liverpool's not going to be in 16th. Chelsea probably isn't going to be in 12th. So it's interesting to see how things are going to shake up. Leeds probably isn't going to be at the top of and third at the end of the year, but it's interesting to see because Brentford and Fulham are 7th and 8th. I don't know. It's going to be funny to look back at the end of the year at like the table early on. I feel like because I think it's going to be a lot different at the end. So
Yeah,
the actually getting there is going to be really fun. Just I don't know. I feel like this year more than most every game I'm like I don't know who's going to win really. I don't know. I can't really see because or I do think someone's going to win and it doesn't happen like City over Newcastle. So it's just great tuning in every week and being like I don't know what's going to happen.
and I don't
Show me some stuff.
and I don't know if it's because of the additional subs, but there were a lot of late goals this week. Alex was kind of
Yeah.
talking about all this Joss, and the Forest and Everton game had two late goals. A couple. Yeah. So I don't say like
You can't be comfortable 2-0 up. There's been a lot of 2-0 blown
that too.
leads, and we know like 2-0's a tough score line to defend notoriously, but still a lot of leads being blown early too. Which that could point to the 5 subs too. So it's exciting. I'm really excited about like almost every match every weekend now.
Yeah. It's fun to wake up and have something to watch, and wish I didn't have to do these scripts for hours on end, but it's all right. So so
Just so in depth, very in depth.
there we go. All right, so I guess that's that. So again, Rex, thank you for joining me, and I guess we'll look forward to doing this again next week. So I
Yeah,
guess for both of
keep
us,
keep the views up on YouTube. We're not doing bad, like 50 views a week. I'll take it. Maybe we can
I'll
double
take
that. Hopefully,
it's about what we're doing with Twitch, not to single that out. But yeah, I mean from Rex and I at the reserve squad. Do you want to do the catchphrase?
all right. Yeah, for Ben and I, thank you for coming. Come back next week for more exciting Premier League action. The league will be more exciting than we are for sure, but we'll try to keep up. So from everyone here, well, just Ben and I, everyone, you stay squatty.
All right, solid, and stop recording.